I am joined by Dickinson creator and executive producer Elena Smith and executive producer and star Haley Seinfeld. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Now we're gonna talk about a lot of things about the show, but before we do that, we're gonna show everyone a little clip from Apple TV Dickinson.
Emily, wake up! Oh, you have to go fetch water.
It is 4 o'clock in the morning, Lavinia. I'm writing.
Mother says you have to. I did it yesterday.
Why doesn't Austin do it?
Austin is a boy.
This is such bullshit.
Well, I don't know if Emily Dickinson ever said bullshit, but Haley, you convey the sentiment very, very well. This is, we know you from Pitch Perfect, we know you from Top 10 Songs, but this is your first television show, and as well as being the star of it, as well as playing Emily Dickinson, which is no small burden, you're also an executive producer. I wanted to get a sense from you, what was that transition like, and what were some of the challenges that you didn't anticipate?
Well, I think, first of all, going back to just the beginning of my first conversation with Elena, and after having read the first couple of episodes, this felt like something so different and so unique, and I wanted to lend my voice to it in more ways than one. And so as far as executive producing, it was really, it was an amazing experience because I got to work with some incredible people on that end with our fellow producers. As far as challenges go, my brain was always fully occupied, whether it was with that hat or as the actor. I found that there were so many more details that I cared about that didn't necessarily directly involve me as a producer or as an actor that it did as a producer. And I just have so much appreciation each time I get the opportunity to portray any kind of character that is so well written, and see it all come together from the ground up. And obviously this was something that Elena had been, putting together for years. But even just with my involvement as a producer coming in and even just going through the whole post-production process was really amazing for me to see. And I just have so much respect and appreciation for everything that goes into creating something that we're ultimately really proud of.
Now, Elena, this is a very different take on Emily Dickinson, someone who we know so much of from her poetry, but from her life, we see her as someone who lived in relative isolation in 19th century Massachusetts. You bring a very modern sentiment or tone to this, as well as a plethora of music, including one by Haley, actually, that was written for the show. Give us a sense of why you chose to take that direction in telling the story.
Well, I think that's something that's pretty fascinating about Emily Dickinson is that her life is defined by this kind of central irony that she wrote almost 2,000 poems, some of the greatest, work ever written in the English language, certainly in American literary history, but almost none of it was really seen or appreciated while she lived. There's such an obliqueness and a strangeness to some of her work that we're still unpacking the meaning of it today. So she really is a woman who was ahead of her time and was really radical in what she was bringing to the page, even if on the outside that rebelliousness wasn't always visible. And I think that she, invites us to ask ourselves, if she couldn't be understood in her own time, can we understand her better in ours?
Well, to that end, clearly as both executive producers, but also as the creator of the show and dealing with your lead actor, I wanted to get a sense from the two of you of what the relationship was as you developed this show, which, congratulations, by the way, has been was renewed even before it debuted in November for a second season. But I want to know from the two of you, what was that like, that relationship, which is across generations itself, but also in this sense, across time and artistic genres?
Well, I think one of our first conversations that Elena and I had, I believe in person, we were in New York, weeks away from our first day of shooting. And one of my, I wouldn't say concerns, but one thing that I was definitely nervous about, I'd never experienced having different directors on one project playing one character, switching out so frequently. And I remember expressing that to Elena, and what she said to me was, these directors are going to come and go, and it's going to be really interesting to get everybody's, own approach and point of view. But the people that aren't going anywhere are you and me. And that was just something that from day one, Elena and I have really always been on the same page. And it's just been an amazing collaboration, I think, between the two of us. And we've had so many amazing directors that have come on and just, made further discoveries as to how good this show can get. But it's been a dream, really.
Yeah, I think that, it's funny because I think that Haley and I, we are different ages. We come from different backgrounds. It's not like by any means that we are the same person. And yet we share this responsibility of creating this character. And we have discovered in this process, I think pretty serendipitously, that at our core, we share a lot of the same values. And I think that that's reflected in how much we both love the community that we've built around the show, in the directors, the rest of the cast, the crew, just everyone we get to see when we come to work every day. And I think that, we both have, I think we both are pretty strong women. And one of the key ways that this show is challenging the myth of Emily Dickinson is saying, you might have thought she was this shy, modest woman who hid in her room. But no, she was a force of nature. She was going out after what she wanted. I mean, how did she keep going for all these years and write these incredible works of art that weren't really like anything that came before? And I think that sharing that strength is what has provided the engine that's kept the whole thing going. So it's something that I just so deeply appreciate about Haley. And I knew from watching True Grit and watching Pitch Perfect and listening to her music, I knew she was strong, but I've learned it more and more through working with her.
Well, Haley, I just, there was so much involved in the way you guys, all the different elements you brought to this. Elena has talked about it from your own background and stuff. I wanted to get a sense from you, how do you feel that balance of drama, of comedy, of the supernatural elements of music? How do you feel it all kind of weave together in the end?
Weirdly enough, it all felt very seamless. I don't know that I felt like I was making a certain type of show as far as genre when we were making it. Because like Elena said, there was so much truth behind the comedy. The comedy was for the relief of the tragic events that was happening in her life. And, what's so incredible about this artist is that she spoke about absolutely everything on her mind and in her soul. And those were things that were dark and scary and confusing and frustrating and funny and witty. And so that was just that's what it was. It was her, this show was her and her imagination and Elena's interpretation of her work. And, it was a fun process trying to find it, shooting our first 2 episodes, David Gordon Green, who's incredible. And realizing that, the discoveries as far as the tone, we never stopped making them. Even throughout, the shooting of season 2, it's just, I think that's what's been so incredible for me as well, is having the opportunity to go back and dig deeper and deeper within each episode, because each episode, and as we shot 2 at a time, is like its own movie. And for me, only having experience in film, it was so exciting because I felt like every 2 weeks we were diving into another movie. And from what I know, I was very spoiled on this show. We shot it as close to a movie as you do and as you can in TV. So it really just felt like we were able to dig deeper and continue finding ways to make that feel all very seamless.
Well, and I think part of why it can feel that way too is because each episode takes its inspiration from I mean, usually from a particular poem of Dickinson's. And I think that, you know, we do get to dive into each little poem as its own little world. And some of, you know, we can even become a horror movie sometimes, you know, like I think that there's so much room because we're working with this, this incredible material, this source material that, you know, it also is part of why I think music is so important to the show. It's like, you know, music being our contemporary poetry in some ways, or poetry being the pop music of its day, and this sort of direct access to what Emily, our character, is thinking and feeling. And even if she's bound up in her corset, you know, what's going on inside is like so wild and so much the same as what anyone today is feeling when they're, you know, trapped with their family.
Well, I'm not sure about that part of it, but I will say that you guys have truly made a classic for our time, taken from one of the great classic poets of our time, of American literature.
Thank
you
you
so much, Elena. Thank you so much,
Thanks
Haley,
so
for
much.
joining us today.